The Rhode Island Foundation, partnering with passionate Rhode Islanders to lead, transform, and inspire our state. Learn more at rhodeislandfoundation.org.
Welcome to another segment of In Another Opinion, a public information program where our discussions are focused on the communities of color in the state of Rhode Island. I'm your host, Peter Wells. My guest today is James Vincent, President of the Providence Chapter of the NAACP. Jim, welcome.
Well, thank
back, you. I should say.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, for inviting me. I've always enjoyed our discussions.
Oh, absolutely, I know. On and off camera.
That's right, that's right.
Jim, just wanted to get a kind of an update as to what's going on with the local chapter of NAACP these days.
Sure. Well, the local branch has been very involved in terms of letting the legislature, vis-a-vis the Speaker and the Senate President, and the Governor know that we need more judges of color. Presently, out of the 90 judges and magistrates in Rhode Island, there are only 2. And those 2 were appointed by Governor Raimondo within the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. You have Rossi Harris in Family Court, which was the first time Family Court had a judge of color. Right. And you have Melissa Long, who's in the Superior Court. She is the second woman of color in Rhode Island history to be appointed to a court. So she's in Superior Court. So with the untimely and tragic deaths of both Walter Stone and Bill Clifton, we would like to see more judges of color. And even if they were there, we want to see more judges of color, because certainly, even if we had 6 judges out of 90, certainly that would not be out of whack in terms of our population, which is almost 30% of the people.
Well, you know, I had Representative Anastasia Williams and Sarah, I've forgotten Sarah's last name, but she's the chair of the Judicial Nominating Committee.
Oh, Sarah Dowling.
Sarah Dowling.
Talked to her too.
We had them on a show not too long ago. And we talked about the process by which the committee looks at judges and obtains applications, or applicants, I should say. And it seems to me that they've improved that a bit. Their focus, however, was that there weren't enough black attorneys applying for judgeships. Now, I noticed in the paper the other day that we have at least 2 that are in the running right now, Kaz Carvalho and Casby Harrison.
Casby Harrison. There's also Debbie Gonzalez. And there's
I don't know Debbie Gonzalez.
Right, that's Roberto Gonzalez's wife, for those who know Roberto Gonzalez.
Yes.
And there's also a young man that's in the public defender's office, Christopher Smith.
Christopher Smith, yes. I did see that name
Smith.
too.
So we have not only more numbers, but we have such quality that I think that, and I've talked to Sally as well as the governor, as well as everybody, and they're really impressed with those names that you just mentioned, that I just mentioned. Very impressed. So I'm looking forward to seeing either 1 or 2 of them put on in terms of these vacancies. I think it'll help everybody if that happens. So I'm confident.
Now, all of them aren't going to be judges. Some of them are for magistrates.
No, they've applied for vacancies in the district court and the Superior Court, so they will be judges. Magistrates, I've not heard of anybody applying for any magistrate positions. So these are, we're talking about district court vacancies, Superior Court vacancies, and the possibility of having judges of color appointed to both. And I feel that can happen, and I feel that will happen.
Well, hopefully so.
Yeah.
The distinction between the magistrates and the actual court judges in the past has been like a training program as such. But the powers are pretty much the same in the court.
Yeah, I guess you can say that. It's the magistrates. It's controversial. It's most recently there was a legislation to have unlimited magistrates that was met with some controversy. So I'm not really sure how that's going to go. The magistrates. There's been some magistrates that have risen up, but pretty much judges of color have not been magistrates first. I think Rossi Harris might have been. But he's the only one that I can think of that ever became a judge through that route. I think the best route is to just be appointed a judge, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah. I think when I first came to Rhode Island in 1995, there was a black female who was actually a magistrate at that time.
There was. I
Yeah.
forgot her name, and I think that might have been in the traffic tribunal. But
Exactly.
I
And
think,
that's where most of them go, to the traffic tribunal, or they sit in for a judge.
yeah, but there's only been two magistrates that I've heard of in the last 27 years that have been of color. That person and Rossi Harris.
Right.
And presently, there's not a judge of color in terms of any court, in terms of magistrates, zero. So, I mean, that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
That not one judge of color is a magistrate in any court. That's a problem. That's unacceptable. And we're monitoring it at the NAACP Providence branch.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about the political climate we're in today, Jim, and where NAACP has a role, and the local chapter obviously does too. But how do you see the NAACP's effectiveness in this current political climate that we're in?
Well, the current political climate nationally is about as bad as it's been in 50 years. I mean, we've never been so divided in my adult lifetime as we are now, and because we have somebody in the White House that is the divider-in-chief as opposed to the uniter-in-chief.
Correct.
And so it makes it tough because he plays the race card each and every day. Didn't create racists and bigots, but he certainly enables and inflames them consciously every day for political gain. I think that's a pretty fair statement. So the climate is tough. We're nationally looking at the states that are trying to roll back voting rights, and there's a lot of voter suppression going on, so we're really vigilant about that because they're mindful of the browning of America, and they're trying to do anything to keep brown and black people from voting in certain states. We don't have that issue here in Rhode Island, but certainly nationally, the gerrymandering of districts, the voter suppression, these are things that the national organization is looking at. We're also looking at what's going on with that at the border, with the separation of families. This is something that the president created, and then he said with the executive order, which wouldn't have done anything, then he signed it one and said, now this ends it. So he's taking credit for a crisis that he created.
Which incidentally, that executive order doesn't change anything.
Anything. I mean, a phone call could have changed it, and he knows that. So what we're urging people to do nationally is to call the Senate. I guess there's a bill, 3036, which would codify in law through the legislature the keeping of families together. So I know we're doing that on a national level.
Yeah, I know. I think Congress is supposed to meet today or this week to make a determination of some sort of a compromise bill. I don't know if that language is in that bill.
Yeah, I've seen different versions, but I think the non-starter is that they're trying to end chain migration. They're trying to actually roll back legal migration.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's a non-starter for a lot of people that are Democrats. They're not going to sign on to that. So I don't think that, I mean, they were willing to sign on to the wall. But the president didn't want to do that. I mean, he's holding out for the wall and the ending of the lottery, diversity lottery, and chain migration.
Yeah.
Even if he could get the wall, if he can't get those other two, he's not signing anything, and that's the real deal.
Well, his comment about less people from Africa and the Caribbean and more people from Norway, and of course I don't think Norwegians want to come here either. But the bottom line is, you're right. The polarization piece that he's created, and the whole issue of immigration, makes America look different.
Well, America, the way it looks to the outside world, we look as bad as we've looked in decades.
Absolutely.
When you start using terms for immigrants like we don't need them infesting our country, those kinds of words, and caging kids, and it's not only separating them from their family, but then putting them in cages. I mean, the world sees this. I mean, the United Nations already filed a complaint against the United States. Who would have thought that the UN would file a human rights complaint against the United States? I mean, who would have thought that?
Who would ever thought we would pull out of some of the committees in the UN that have been for human rights and civil rights around the world?
No rational or sane person would have thought that.
No, it's true. Well, let's talk a bit about locally. What's happening locally with gerrymandering, with voting trends, and what's the chapter doing with that?
There's really no. I mean, gerrymandering. I mean,
well, there's some here, but
every 10 years, there's districts that are drawn or redrawn or whatever. So that hasn't come up yet. What we're focused in on as a branch is early voting. Early voting is something we feel the time has come to do that. 34 other states have it, including the District of Columbia. Moreover, during the presidential election of 2016, 46% of the country had already voted. The sky didn't fall, nothing happened, people went about their business. So what we would like is maybe the ability of people to vote maybe 2 weeks earlier than the voting day, maybe on weekends or whatever, some process where if you don't vote on election day, you don't vote. The absentee ballot should be used for emergencies, not as a form of early voting. We should have true early voting like 34 other states. So Nellie Gorbea, this is her priority.
Yes.
This is her priority. And the NAACP feels that anything involving voting rights is important. So we've signed on to that. And so that's our emphasis. Last year we signed on to automatic voter registration, which did get signed into law. So we have that now. Other bills that we've signed on to statewide are the Fair Wage Bill, which has had a lot of problems at the end, being watered down. I know that Representative Marcia Ranglin articulated that thought when it happened. The $15 an hour wage, minimum wage, not quite sure what happened to that. Also, the bond for the renovation of schools, $250 million this year, $250 million next year. I know after speaking to the speaker, he wasn't averse to doing that, so I felt that was going to happen. The governor, of course, is for that, and probably the person that's pushing it the hardest is our treasurer, Seth Magaziner. So we certainly feel that one of the reasons why Latino achievement is last in the country and black achievement is not much better is the state of the school buildings, which are in horrendous shape.
Oh, they are. They absolutely are.
It makes a difference in achievement.
And they're too old to be retrofitted. Of course, the money is there. It's necessary in order to rebuild.
We have to do something because it's causing these students not to achieve. You have to have kids being in a safe, welcoming school building in order for them to learn. I mean, that's a part of it. It's just not the teachers, just not the parents. It's also the physical plant that they go to each and every day. That has to be in order for them to be able to learn.
True. Jim, again, focusing more on the local chapter, how is the health of the local chapter in terms of growth, membership, so on and so forth?
Local branch is doing really well. I think you were at our dinner last year in November. It was a capacity crowd. We had some great award winners, great keynote speaker in terms of the former Patriot ball player, Hightower. We had a breakfast a couple of weeks ago, packed, sold out. City Councilwoman Nerva Latfortune got a standing ovation before and after a speech.
Yeah, she's a wonderful lady.
Yes, the executive committee is working on the issues that I've mentioned, but what people don't see is the calls that we get each and every day. Because
like what?
Well, we get calls in terms of employment discrimination mostly. People are beside themselves because the climate is such that whatever problems we had before, they've been exacerbated. People are having problems on the job in terms of supervisors, in terms of not getting a job, in terms of losing their job. So we have to try to help them in any way we can. We're not lawyers, we're advocates, so we have different strategies to help people depending on their situation. But we get calls in terms of employment discrimination, I would say at least every other day, and then other forms of discrimination in terms of housing or police complaints in terms of how their loved one was treated. So we have to deal with that. Those things are the bread and butter of a branch. That's the day-to-day stuff that comes to me and that I have to handle, because if we don't handle it, then the word's going to get out that the NAACP didn't help me. So we want to make sure that we leave people in a better situation than they were when they called us. So believe it or not, most of my time is spent dealing with constituent calls.
How large is the chapter now?
We have over a couple hundred members.
Okay.
We'd love to have 400 or 1,000.
Sure.
And and a lot of that probably is my fault, not pushing membership as much as I should. But I will be doing that now. I got some good people on the executive committee that really are committed, and we want people to be members. It's like anything else. numbers matter. That's why the NRA is so powerful. That's why AARP is so powerful. So we realize that having more members and having more numbers makes a difference. Will make a difference in this state, and we're going to be about that. But the people that are there now are doing great. I appreciate what they do as volunteers each and every day. I'm a volunteer. I think people don't realize we don't have any staff. So we do what we have to do with what we have.
So there is no staff per se, but you have volunteers who fill that role.
Yeah, volunteers that fill their roles. So I can't say enough about people that give of their time to deal with things that are bigger than themselves on a volunteer basis. For me, it comes easy because I appreciate the fact that those who came before me, who fought, bled, and died to give me an opportunity to go to some of the best schools in the country so that my perspective would be broad. I owe a debt that can never be repaid. But there are other people that, for their own reasons, feel that they need to give back to the community in a tangible way through volunteerism. So I mean, I can't say enough about them. We do have one person that helps us with events, and so we have a deal with her in terms of bringing in money. But I think that outside of that, with no staff, and to do the kind of events and to do the kind of stuff we do, I think it's commendable, and I give all the credit to the people that work with me. I get too much of the credit and not enough of the blame.
Let me ask you a question. Can you, some of the programs that the local chapter is currently running or operating?
The local branch?
Yeah, the local branch. I say chapter all the time, but the local branch. What are some of those programs?
Well, one of the things that I'm doing, I'm working with, or we, because I also have an education committee person that works with me. We're working with Kids Count. Kids Count is proactive in terms of college and career readiness. So we've been working with them to try to come up with a program that will help our students of color, others as well, be more ready for college or career. So I've been meeting with them over the last year and a half. People like myself, Nick Figueroa, for example, of College Visions. We've been meeting with them and some students from I forget the name of the student group now, Young Voices, I think it is, to try to see how we can really dig deeper in terms of these schools to get kids more college ready. So that's a program that is specific in terms of what we're doing. But we're doing things in terms of employment. We have a robust website in terms of jobs that are coming online. I have about 50 companies and organizations that feed job vacancies into me each and every week. That goes back to my days when I was the president of RIAP, Rhode Island Affirmative Action Professionals. Those contacts have been moved over. Elmer Pena is my employment committee chair. He was with me at RIAP. So, if you're looking for a job, the best place to look, I say, is to look at the NAACP website, which we're constantly improving. So that's jobs. We have collaborations with other people. One of the things that we're going to be working with in terms of Providence is to get rent control on the ballot. So we're working with Direct Action for Rights and Equality, or DARE, to do that. So we might be collaborating with them on a candidates forum as well in the future. So stay tuned. But rent control is on our horizon, or on our list of things that we're investing our time in. And we feel that the increasing gentrification in Providence, in terms of neighborhoods which were predominantly people of color and people getting priced out, we feel we need to take a look at that.
With rent control, there's obviously statistics that are necessary to generate the numbers. Who's working with you on that?
Well, Direct Action for Rights and Equality, or DARE, they're working with some people that have experience with rent control. And what we're seeking to do is to have rent control on the ballot in Providence in November.
But to say what?
To say that we would like an ordinance in Providence that would govern rent control. Ultimately, the people of Providence have to decide it. It's not done by, the mayor or the city council. It has to be voted on by the people in terms of this particular ordinance. So that takes signatures, that takes lobbying, that takes a lot of different things. And so Direct Action has come to us and for help, and we've said we would do that. So the key municipal issue is rent control. We're also working with municipal police departments in terms of recruitment, and I have a personal interest in making sure that we have more people of color at the highest ranks. That's an area that continues to be a problem.
Yes, it is.
Continues to be a
I
problem.
don't know. Do we have anyone who's beyond a sergeant in the Providence
There's not a
Police
black.
Department?
Well, we do have color. We have a major, Oscar Perez, who's Latino, and he's
correct.
there. But no African American or Caribbean or African is above a sergeant. And there's reasons for that. But and a couple of years ago, I think you might remember that we called for the mayor
Yes.
to appoint a major. Which happened under Buddy Cianci, happened under Cicilline. I think even Angel Tavares was able to appoint a major, African American major. The mayor's been reluctant to do that, and so we remain with the sergeant. To me, it's a public safety issue. If you remember Ferguson,
Yes.
they had nobody over a sergeant either.
Right.
And what happened in Ferguson, Missouri, is that they called the state police, and then when the state police came in, they had a captain who had ties to the community. So that captain almost single-handedly calmed things down. But it was the state police. The local police wasn't prepared to deal with the response. That Ferguson could happen anywhere. It can happen in Providence. And I don't feel that Providence is adequately prepared to deal with something like that. State police is now, thanks to the NAACP and others, there are 2 people on the command staff where there was none last year.
Well, I was going to say, is the NAACP monitoring the recruitment activity?
Yes, we are. We're part of that. And last year, and we were shocked, 64% of the recruits that went to the academy were people of color. It was an all-time record. Now that was the result of a lot of different people being involved, not just the NAACP.
And where are those candidates today?
But they're on the force. We had one African-American woman, which is Rhonda Araujo, who's been there 20 years.
Rhonda's about to leave.
Rhonda's about to retire.
Right.
So there was a need. So there's at least 4 African-American women, for example, that were brought on. And I met with a couple of them just recently just to see how things were going. So now there's 5, I think, or at least 3, but I think it's 5, with Rhonda being the person that is not new. But it needs to be a lot more, and there's guys as well, and there's also people that are Asian and Latino that came in under that class, almost 2/3. And in the previous class, it was also a good showing. So, in time, I guess things can start percolating to the top, but we might not have time. Things can happen in an instant.
What about the fire department?
Fire department, that's another area where they have some challenges in terms of having people of color, in that department. I understand there's at least 3 lieutenants that I know of. I know that Grace Diaz's son is a lieutenant.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Dottie McCullough, who's a Cape Verde Progressive Center member with me, her son's a lieutenant. And then there's a female lieutenant, Stephanie Blackwell. So there's at least 3 lieutenants, maybe more, but I don't think there's anybody above that rank. And so they got some work to do as well.
And numbers must be pretty small because visibly I don't see it.
Yeah, well, there's at least 3 lieutenants that I know of, maybe
Besides
4th.
lieutenants, I mean in terms of just rank and file.
Oh, the rank and file, they could do better. I don't know those numbers, and I don't know what the class, the most recent class, what those numbers were. I don't have that at my disposal right now, but I could probably get it. But I'm sure that it's not anything that would be significant, because if it was, I'm sure they would have told us.
Very good. Listen, before we run out of time, Jim, a half hour goes by real fast, but talk about some of the successes of the local chapter, let's say within the last few years or so.
Well, I was very happy last year. I mentioned automatic voter registration, but there was also 6 bills that was under the Justice Reinvestment organizational group that the governor put together.
Yeah.
I was one of the members. So what that was to reform, not solve, but to reform probation and parole, which in Rhode Island, we're in the dark ages, really needed it. So I worked with that organization, that task force, for 2 years.
Yes.
Last year it didn't come up for a vote, or 2 years ago it didn't come up for a vote in the House, and then it went into last year, and I was pleased that all 6 bills were approved by the House, the Senate, and the governor not only signed those 6, but there was a 7th bill that also was added, and I was at that signing ceremony. So that was significant. That
Actually,
really was significant.
I was there at the signing ceremony myself,
Community
but I
reinvestment.
also was involved in the Civil Rights Roundtable. We had some input with the Public Defender's Office, but yes, that's major.
That was major, and those were things that we were involved in, right from day one. So those 7 reinvestment, the social justice in terms of the prison system and the parole system, probation and parole, I should say. That was major. Its time had long been ready to come. So we were involved in that. And of course, I mentioned recruitments that we continued to be involved with. I work with maybe a half a dozen to a dozen captains or colonels, I should say. And I promote them on my show, and I go to meetings, and that's an ongoing thing to make sure that the police forces in Rhode Island reflect the diversity that we have. And I guess in the last 3 or 4 years, the racial profiling legislation, I was testifying on behalf of that, so that happened. But there was a lot of people that was involved in that as well. So, we stay busy.
Yeah. Going forward, what pieces of legislation are focal right now for the chapter?
Well, we can't predict the future. I mentioned the $15 an hour. I'm not quite sure. I guess that didn't happen because the session is over, and I haven't heard anything since. But and also early voting. That's really important. I just haven't. The session I think ended last night, so I don't know exactly where these things stand. So we are really concerned about the early voting, but of course the judges are not tied to the session. No. And so that moves forward. So I'm going to continue to make sure that I let the Speaker, the Senate President. I had lunch with Sally Dowling to talk about diversity, and I've talked to the governor a couple of times, and we'll continue to talk to her that this is something that's important.
But I'm sure the governor's been responsive.
She is impressed with the group of people that have applied, and she's waiting to see what the Judicial Nominating Commission brings her. I'm confident they're going to bring her some people. You named some names. Yes. Casby Cavallo, Casby Harrison, Debbie Gonzalez, Christopher Smith, and then there's other people that applied that might not have made it this time, but are going to reapply. Angeline Cooper, William Tresvan. These are people. So that pipeline they used to talk about, we have that pipeline. Yeah. Okay, so that's done. So and these people all have impeccable credentials. So now it's just a matter of making sure that they are part of the five to go to the governor, and for the governor to actually appoint them. And we'll be very happy to see that.
Jim, we're almost out of time. Is there any particular thing you'd like to say to the viewers?
Well, the NAACP Providence branch meets the third Thursday of the month at 883 Eddy Street, which is the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge. We meet at 6 p.m. The public is invited. Matter of fact, the public is welcome. We need your energy. We need your ideas. We need your talent and treasure. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you the third Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. No holidays, no vacations when it comes to civil rights. We'll see you the third Thursday at 6 p.m.
We have run out of time, but I want to thank today's guest, James Vincent, and you, the viewers, for tuning in to another segment of In Another Opinion. A special thanks to PBS for making this program possible. I'm your host, Peter Wells. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at IA Opinion. And have a great day.
The Rhode Island Foundation, partnering with passionate Rhode Islanders to lead, transform, and inspire our state. Learn more at rhodeislandfoundation.org.